Okay, I grew up in a small town in the extreme southwestern corner of Kentucky. Now, Murray, Kentucky in those days, 1950s and 60s, was a town of about 8,000 to 10,000 folks. But that little town had a strong history and tradition in high school football. So, like a lot of young boys growing up in Murray in those days, I looked forward to the day I could wear the black and gold, the Murray High Tigers. And unlike what you see here tonight, I was actually one of the big kids growing up. I was even called Tank by some of my friends. And I did play offensive and defensive guard in 8th and 9th grade junior high football. However, along about that time, I just kind of quit growing. And I had some health issues. Now, I don't know if that was related that much to the fact I didn't grow much after that, or it just could have been genetics. But a couple of things happened. Some of the kids really started kidding me a lot about my weight. And being a typical teenager, I was pretty insecure and very sensitive, and it hurt my feelings. So I decided I was going to program me a very restrictive crash diet. And it was successful. I lost about 30, 40 pounds, but it also left me pretty weak. Also, for reasons that are not known to this day, one morning I woke up and a blood vessel had ruptured internally in my nose. I got an infection. That was serious. I'd go to the hospital, have some surgeries, and that particular infection destroyed most of the cartilage in my nose, which resulted in a trip to St. Louis, Missouri for plastic surgery. Now, this was all right on the eve of my dream. This was right before my sophomore year. I was going into my first year in high school football. Well, I got to tell you, my parents always supported me, but they were not real keen on their boy playing high school football at 117 pounds and a nose that was real fragile. Well, luckily, the coaches and the staff came up with a pretty extensive face mask. It's a weird looking thing, but it gave me a lot of protection. So my parents relented. It was this time of year. It was August. And if you ever played football, you know how you dread those 2-a-day hot, horrid practices before the season starts. Well, on top of that, if you've never been the smallest guy on a football team, I would not recommend it, because I was getting beat up and pushed around daily. I'd never been dominated like that in sports before. It was embarrassing. It was humiliating. It hurt. Plus, there were a couple of guys that just took great pleasure in bullying me. Well, I'll never forget one day I was walking home after practice. I'd had it. I couldn't do it anymore. I was going to quit. I was crying. I didn't see him because one of my best friends and one of the leaders on our team was walking behind me. He walked up to me and he put his arm over my shoulder and he said, "What's wrong, dude?" Another nickname. And I just opened up and told him everything that was going on. Well, as we continued to walk home, he encouraged me over and over to not quit, to hang in there. And he was a macho guy. He told me, "You don't worry about those guys that are bullying you. I'm going to take care of that." Well, our coach during those years was Preston Ty Holland. He coached at our high school for 43 years. Mr. Holland was one of the most admired and respected men in our community, and certainly by hundreds of players that played for him for over 4 decades. He was known in Kentucky as the Dean of Western Kentucky high school football coaches. Well, I found out after the fact, Coach Holland, right before my sophomore year, he was speaking to one of the civic clubs. And he was talking about the upcoming season, the prospects, and he's going down the roster, and he said, we got all shapes and sizes this year. We got them from 275 to 117. And he said, don't be fooled. That's 117 pounds of heart. I couldn't quit. Not with the dean of the Kentucky coaches saying something like that about me and my best friend having my back. But still, that sophomore season was long and tough. But at least I had a good front row seat for all the games. My spot on the bench was there all year long. But it was tough though, because going to the football banquet that year, I had to sit there and watch so many of my friends walk right by me and put on that coveted Murray High leather jacket. Well, my junior year, things got a little better. I put on 20 pounds, and I was really surprised and excited when I learned that Coach Holland was going to start me at left offensive guard. My junior year was a really good year for Murray High School. We won the region in our division, got in the playoffs, and we made it all the way to the state championship game. Now, our opponents that day were a team from the extreme eastern end of the state, from the mountains of eastern Kentucky, coal miners. Now, they were tough. Lynch High School, Lynch, Kentucky, Lynch High School Bulldogs. And they played like Bulldogs that day. We did not win the state championship. Lynch squeaked out a 39-0 win. Believe me, it was hard living with that memory, that beat down for the next year. When going into my senior year, the next season, I had buffed up to a hefty 145. And some of my teammates had selected me to be one of the co-captains that year. Well, we had a lot of guys coming back, good nucleus from the previous year, and we had a lot of motivation. We were playing with a big chip on our shoulder because we had one mission, one goal. We wanted to get back to that championship and get some redemption for Murray and for Murray High. That season, we went undefeated in the regular season. We won a region again, got in the playoffs, and we did make it back to that state championship game. And as fate would have it, we were playing the Lynch Bulldogs again. It was Thanksgiving Day, 1961. It was a kind of a typical fall day. It was cold, it was gray and overcast, and then it started to rain. And it rained, and it rained. The field was a quagmire. We played in the Mud Bowl that day for that championship. But I got to tell you, Hollywood couldn't have scripted a much more exciting game and certainly a more dramatic finish. We were leading 14-13. The clock was running down, and like happens so much in football, Lynch had mounted a last-minute drive. They were on our 15-yard line. It was 4th and 10. Time for one more play, and they had to score. Well, they opted to kick a field goal, which we all thought, that's pretty strange, considering the conditions. But they had the best kicker in the state, possibly the best kicker in the history of Kentucky high school football. Well, it wasn't a very good snap. The holder kind of fumbled, but it didn't matter because we had an all-out rush. We were all over the ball, the holder. The kicker never even touched the ball. I will never forget that moment, the pure joy and elation of knowing that we had won Murray High School's first ever state championship. And we did it by beating the team that had totally humiliated us the year before. And I think I learned some lessons during those years, and during those struggles, and I've tried to carry those lessons with me in life. I learned, first of all, that on the road to your goals and to your dreams, you're often going to run into obstacles and roadblocks. And it's tempting to alter your path. It's tempting to quit. But when you're going through those tough times, when you look like you're in the middle of a dark tunnel, you really don't know how bright that light might be at the other end unless you just keep going. I also learned how important it is to have people who care about you and support you during those times. If there are any young people possibly here tonight or that might watch this, I would say to you, do not give up on your hopes and dreams just because you may not be the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. If you need encouragement, just think about an old man that stood up here one night in Greenville, South Carolina, and told you about a boy who was nothing but an undersized lineman grunt his 10th grade year, felt he was on a dead-end road in football, and 2 years later, he was a co-captain of a state championship team. And I did have the privilege, after that game, of playing in one more high school football game. And it was a double privilege because I was also coaching that game by Coach Holland. I have the program here tonight from that game. It was 1962, just happened to have it. Thank you, my wife brought it. It was the 1962 Kentucky East-West High School All-Star game. That's my coach, Coach Holland, up in the corner. We just had the anniversary of the game. It was August 11th, 1962. Of course, you flip this open, my picture's in there and a lot of other guys. And they have the typical statistics that you get in a program. They have your height, your weight, stats. But there are things they can't put in a program. And there are things which I think really define you. And that's what's up here and here. Thank you.